Welcome to episode 5 of the Willpower podcast. My guest today is Derek Gutierrez. Derek is a grounding and authenticity coach, as well as a breathwork facilitator here in Austin. Derek is also one of the leaders of the Awaken Warriors men's group, which meets weekly on Tuesdays. You can find out more about Derek on Instagram at Derek Breathes or his website, which I will link in the show notes. Enjoy.
Beautiful.
Okay. Why the breath?
Why the breath? It started when my son was a little kid and he had chronic illness. And part of that ended up being asthma. And so the breath originally started by trying to figure out a holistic way to heal him and help him just live a healthier life. And that turned me on to Dr. Buteyko, the Buteyko breathing method. And there was a gentleman who's still very active in that world, Dr. Patrick McKeown, who is the leading expert in that. And from there, it went into sports for me, competition. So when I was competing nationally, then that Buteyko style of breathing really enhanced my ability to perform at a higher level. And then it went into the spiritual aspect of breath and the connection to literally everything through the breath. And so it started off as curiosity and wanting to help my son, and then it ended up helping me change my life and understanding that if you can control your breath, then you can control your life. And you can connect yourself to any part, whether it's spiritual, physical, mental, like all of the different states you can access and control through the breath.
Wow. At what point did you decide that this was going to be a big part of your life?
So it became a big part of my life before I ever started teaching it. Before I ever started guiding people on journeys, before I actually ever went through a journey on my own. So Wim Hof is a very well-known, probably one of the most well-known breathwork practitioners, creating his own method, right? And his method is based off of, the same kind of breath that has been around for thousands of years. It's just he has a small different take on it.
And he kind of just popularized it.
Yes, he popularized it through some pretty incredible physical feats, and then through some scientific research that he was able to prove along with his style of breath. So I don't know if you're familiar with him to that extent, but
I have his book here.
Yeah?
Wim Hof Method. So I'm
He's
pretty familiar with.
Okay. So his ability to activate the nervous system.
Yeah, do you want to just explain that whole... Are you talking about the E. coli study?
I don't necessarily know that I don't know that I'm aware of the E. coli
I think it was
study.
E. coli, at least. It was something that he taught a group of people how to use the breath to control some response in their body.
Their autonomic nervous system.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Did I make up the E. coli part?
Maybe. I know that I don't know what they injected them with, but they basically put a bacteria inside of them. So it could have easily been E. coli. And then there's a natural response time where the body will notice that it's there and then start trying to actively create remedies, duplicate themselves, the white blood cells, to go and fight this, right? And I think he and his team, the people that he was able to train, were able to do that within 15 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
It's been a long time since I researched that. That was probably 10, 15 years ago. But that was another part that put me on my path of holistic medicine and nutrition and just the whole mind, body, soul connection of where I am now.
Yeah, there is such a like fix it mentality around a lot of health. At least that's the way it has been.
Sure.
It seems like we're trending towards more holistic, like I'm forgetting the word now, but the type of healthcare that where you do things to avoid it in the future.
Sure.
Yeah, and just overall health.
Yeah.
And I think that is a lot better because our bodies are like an entire system.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't something where you can just slap a change on without like, there's going to be side effects to everything.
There's cause and effect for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're treating one specific symptom, then like you're saying, you're not fixing the cause of that, right? That's just what is being shown. And then from there, you're allowing other things to show up that could affect you in different ways. And now it's just an extension of that.
Right.
Plus, it's what is being added to your body, right? And so, yeah, the naturopathic and the holistic and the natural way of trying to understand your body and what it's doing and why it's doing it so that you can fix the underlying cause and then the symptoms go away from there. Yeah. And the breath actually plays a huge role in that.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that? Because
Sure.
I think, just what do people not know about breathing? Where are people going wrong?
Most people breathe without intention, without conscious understanding of how their breath is going. And so naturally, I think when people think about the breath, they may intuitively know how to breathe. But if you just watch people breathe, a lot of the times it's through their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not through their mouth, it's through their nose, but it's shallow. And sometimes it's into the chest instead of into the diaphragm. And so there's a difference between all of those. Naturally, breathing through the mouth, breathing into the chest, that's going to keep your body in more of a fight or flight, more of a sympathetic nervous state. And so just the act of breathing in through your nose and into your diaphragm, just a nice normal breath to a deep breath, and then a slow, longer exhale than what your in-breath is, will bring your nervous system back into an equal state.
Does it matter if you're exhaling through the nose or mouth?
No, not really. Not for regulating your nervous system. So there's you want to be able to breathe through your nose all the time, 100% of the time. There's a number of different reasons why. One of those is just it oxygenates your blood more. Because whenever you breathe out of your mouth, you're letting more carbon dioxide out. Whereas if you breathe in through your nose, you're keeping some of that in. And the carbon dioxide is actually helpful because it'll take the oxygen through your blood system. That's what carries the oxygen to your blood and to make it go everywhere else in the body that it needs. And so when you breathe out through your mouth, if you don't make it a regular occurrence, then you're okay. If you're just doing it for a practice, 10, 20 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is, right, it's going to help you stimulate different parts of your nervous system. But specifically for bringing the nervous system back down into a parasympathetic nervous state, that rest and relax, absolutely. There's a straw method where you breathe in through your nose, into your diaphragm, into your belly, and then... And the straw method will naturally reduce the amount of air that's being exhaled. So it's going to slow down your breath without a whole lot of effort because of the shape that you're making. Like there's a straw, it can't go any faster than what it is unless you try and force it. And so that's a very easy way to get an understanding of what your breath ideally is like, and to naturally just kind of bring your heart rate down, bring your nervous system state down.
Would you lead me through a couple deep breaths?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I also want to invite, any listeners to go along with it.
Okay.
And maybe I'll add in so that they can skip ahead if they're driving or whatever.
Okay. So this is something that you can do if you are driving or anytime you're feeling stressed or anxious. So this is one of the first things I teach my clients in the coaching world and in the breathwork world, to regulate their nervous system. There's 4 different parts to this. So we'll do 3 breaths of the first 3. And that way it's just nice and easy.
Okay.
So the very first breath that you want to do is, and each of these are going to be in through your nose. In through your nose, and then the out breath is going to change, whether it's through your nose or through your mouth. So big deep breath in through your nose into your diaphragm, and then just let it go with a little sigh. And do that again, nice and deep in, and let it go with a little sigh. And that's just letting any energy be released through your body. You can feel it. It's a somatic response, nice and deep in through your belly. And let it go, nice and slowly. And then deep in through your nose again. And then straw method. Whatever's comfortable, whatever speed rate that is. Another deep breath in through your nose into your belly. Through the straw, out of your mouth, nice and slow. If you want to try and slow it down a little bit more, you're more than welcome to. But that will naturally restrict the amount of air leaving your body. Another deep inhale, in through your nose, and then out through the straw. And then the last 3 are just going to be in through your nose and out through your nose. And then again, try and regulate the amount of time it takes for you to exhale through your nose. Just nice and slow. If you do a 3 or 4 second inhale, then maybe a 5 or 6 or longer exhale. Last one. How does your body feel?
It feels so much more relaxed than it did.
Did you feel any kind of sensations show up in your body?
Right now, it feels like there's some tingles in my arms.
Yeah. So that is just, you did nice, proper, deep breaths. You slowed everything down, and you got a lot of oxygen to your body, more than what you normally do. And a lot of times those sensations, scientifically, it's just that. It's that there's more oxygen in your body than you're accustomed to having or feeling.
So, is there a way to train our bodies to breathe that way unconsciously? Because a lot of the time we're just breathing on autopilot.
The more that you can... So I catch my breath all the time. I'm constantly in so many different parts of my daily life reconnecting with my breath. And every time that I do that, it's okay. Am I breathing in nice and deep through my nose and into my diaphragm? And then am I slowly exhaling? And then just the act of placing intention into your breath and continuing to make that part of your daily routine. So you can associate it with anytime I see a color, or anytime I feel something, anytime I feel the wind, or whatever it is. Anytime I look in the mirror, anytime I look at my computer screen, or it could just be an intuitive feeling. It doesn't have to be so rigid and structured. But anytime you feel like, oh, my breath.
One fun one I've had is anytime I think about how I should be focusing on breathing more, just do it then.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because that's something that comes up for me. I'm like, gosh, I have not been focusing on breathing. And then I'm like, oh, well, now's the perfect time.
And now is always the perfect time for everything.
Okay, so just adding as many of those moments as you can throughout the day.
And then it'll become part of your natural thought process and part of your just being. So I check in without any cues. I don't know. I've never counted it, but it's multiple 10, 20 times an hour. So every 5 or 10 minutes at least. I'm like, oh. Add a little smile to it.
Has that progressed? Have you noticed that?
Yes, very much so. Yeah. It's just like anything else. Where your energy goes, energy flows, right? So anything you put thought into, it's going to constantly reappear in your life. So if breath work and intentional breathing and living a healthier life and the correlation between the two makes sense to you, then yeah, just start with, I want to just make an intention. I would love to focus more on my breath every day, 20 times a day, right? Put a sticky note in a couple different spots in your house. Sticky notes and I are best friends. The sticky note company I owe so much gratitude for in my evolution of my spiritual journey and just growth as a human. If you look at my house, there are so many little sticky notes of just thought concepts and philosophies that I wanted at one point to adopt into my life. And now when I look at them, it's confirmation of, man, I've grown so much. And I'll create new ones every once in a while to put on there just to continue that evolution, because the growth process never stops.
Do you ever get sticky note overload? Where there's too many, they lose their importance?
No, I make sure to keep it at a good, solid, foundational level.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to have sticky notes everywhere because that feels chaotic.
Right. And you want to make sure they're, the most important things, reminders.
What is going to be very impactful for you in the way that you want to show up in your life. And so, for instance, in coaching, I talk about how you want to live your life, kind of what your purpose is, what your intention is. So a mission statement. And that's what I call it. Let's create your mission statement for how you want to show up in life. So the most successful businesses, they have a mission statement that in one sentence will highlight the heart of what it is that they want to get out of their company, with their company. And so with a mission statement for you and the way you want to live your life, the things, maybe 10 sticky notes, right? Of each one of those categories that you want to put most focus into, that's kind of how I did mine. So at the time, a lot of it was all about my heart and how I wanted to show up and not have attachment to things. And through that, so much peace has come into my life, because when you're attachment holding on to stuff, right, then it's really hard to let things go. And so the ability to let things go but still live very big and still love very hard is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It's also hard to appreciate things if you're worried about losing them.
Exactly, because the energy of losing them is overriding your ability to appreciate the energy of having it.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a session last night about that whole thing, the whole process, because he was creating scenarios in his head because of little things, little subtle changes in the way she was responding to him, and then creating a story around that. And then the story became an emotion that he was feeling as if he was losing her in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was beautiful for him to feel that. Like, feelings and emotions are amazing. They don't always tell you the truth, though. They're just there to give you guidance, right? Like, he wasn't really experiencing that, but what it was showing him is that he loves her a lot. And there's parts of him that are insecure in himself, and it's being manifested in the relationship because he's been hurt by other people. And when these things happened in the past, shortly after, the relationship was no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
And even though they both have a really solid foundation and they show up for each other in really great ways, there was enough being presented that was still, he wasn't able to let go of what happened in the past, that he was taking that perception and reality of what was an experience at one point in his life and applying it to a very healthy relationship. And so it was creating a lot of disruption and resistance in his current reality. And so to be able to highlight that for him and get him to see that, one, it's a story, but two, this is proof, like 100% evidence that you can create any emotion you want to feel. And that's essentially what manifestation is, right? It's attaching an outcome to an emotion and an emotion to an outcome, and then living in that experience and believing that it's happening until it actually happens. And so negatively is where we experience most of that, especially in relationships, right? If we think for any reason that our partner is not being trustworthy, a lot of the times that's just our own issues. Just like in that scenario, it was his own issues. He wasn't being untrustworthy, she wasn't being untrustworthy, but there was something that happened that caused him to not trust the relationship because it had caused pain when that same thing happened before. And so using that same analogy and that same process, if you want to attach something very beautiful, like a very heartfelt, loving, heart-opened emotion to an outcome, then you can achieve the same thing because that's where your energy is going to end up going.
Okay, so it's choosing what you're attaching to things and avoiding that, or more just being aware.
Awareness is huge.
Aware of when you are almost like assuming something negative
Mm-hmm.
and bringing it into being.
Exactly.
Simply by assuming it.
Yep. Because it's not actually happening. It's just your perception of it happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do you want to see and feel the worst parts, or do you want to see and feel the best parts? And it's not being blind and it's not being ignorant. Like, you can still have big boundaries and big respect and love for yourself and not put yourself in a position that is taking away from your integrity and your character. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused, is that it's like, oh, well, you're just being positive. That's a negative. Like, you're going to have a shit life if all you can do is think positively. And it's not that. It's like, you still have negative thoughts that come in. You still have some insecurities. It's just now, and I use this a lot, your processor speed is so much faster. Because instead of sitting with those thoughts and those emotions that come up and letting it take over your body, as soon as you notice that it's happening, your awareness, it clicks in so much faster. And then you're able to diagnose or process, right? Feel into your body, feel into your reality, like what part of this is really true, what part of this am I making up? And then if this is just me making stuff up, then how do I want my imagination to work? Do I want it to work for me, or do I want it to work against me? Do I want to believe and trust and know that this is going to happen, that she is trustworthy and that we have an amazing relationship? Or do I want to invite the worst possible outcome in? And so it's awareness, your processor speed of knowing whenever you're going down that rabbit hole, and then choosing how you want your life to look and how you want to feel.
And so those are the steps you would recommend people take. Is first of all, like, trying to become aware of it when it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
When you notice yourself going down that kind of negative thought, feeling loop. Is there something you can do outside of that? Of like trying to bring that positive? Because yes, I see what you're saying about it. It feels, there's an aspect that feels naive of like, oh, I just assume the best always.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you avoid that, but then also do like have a belief that something good is coming?
You feel. It's all about feeling. And it's all about, so like first there's presence. First there's awareness. And then there's presence with the awareness. Like, what is the awareness showing me? How is it making my body feel? Is this real? Or is this made up? Where is this coming from? Why is it showing up? And so it's not just, I don't want to feel this way, so I'm not going to. Because that's where you start getting into a slippery slope of just choosing positivity and basically turning a blind eye to everything else. And that doesn't help you, because it's going to continue to come back because you're not facing it. You can only heal and navigate and process through what you're able to actually see. And that's the beauty of the awareness, is the awareness allows you the opportunity to see it. And then with your presence, you can just sit with it and you can observe it. And the goal there is to not create any kind of judgment around it. No shame, no guilt. Just acknowledge it for being something that's showing up in your existence in that moment. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing, right? There's no negative experiences, no positive experience. It's just, what are we choosing to attach to it?
Yeah, I like to imagine, this might be somewhat true, maybe not, but that emotions are kind of chemicals in our body, and if you push something away, you choose not to feel it, they're just not processed, but they're still there. And then that again, like you said, they're going to come back. That thing is going to just stay there. You're not feeling it right now, but it's still there. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you decide to face it and you just feel the emotion, that's your body processing and releasing whatever that was.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing, is the ability to feel into it, but also knowing that you don't have to create a resolution for it. Sometimes whatever it is just wants to be seen and acknowledged. Mm-hmm. And then from there, it will go away on its own, or you can let it go.
That's a super freeing realization. I had that maybe like a week or so ago. I was super stressed, and I was late for something. I was in the car, and I had like a 30-minute drive ahead of me. And I was just like, oh, I'm just feeling stressed right now. Mm-hmm. Like it feels like I need to fix something. I need to do something right now. But I had a 30-minute drive. There's nothing I can do. And so I realized, like, there is nothing for me to do right now. This is just a feeling. Mm-hmm. And so I went to breathing.
Yeah.
I just focused on my breathing and tried to let that emotion pass through me.
Mm-hmm. And you felt better afterwards.
Yes,
Yeah.
way better.
Yeah, it's amazing how we hyper focus on so many things that we don't have control over. And that's where anxiety comes from. It's focusing on something that hasn't happened yet, and that we most likely don't even have control over, because if we did, there probably wouldn't be any anxiety around it, right? Because the things that we have control over, why would we stress about that?
Yeah. So where do you find willpower? What keeps you going?
What do you define willpower as? I think this is appropriate considering your name.
I think willpower is your ability to make decisions that align with your long-term goals.
Okay.
Versus momentary pleasures, or versus blindly following emotional states, I think.
Sure. Yeah. I think it comes from, for me, it comes from just this burning desire inside to just be better than yesterday, to show up for myself in ways that I never have, to show up for my son, and to just be the best version that I can. At one point, willpower was external, very external. It was, how much can I do to make this person see me or love me? How much can I do to get this or achieve that? And that's where burnout comes from, I feel. And that's where things just start to deteriorate, because the fire is burning from a fuel source that's not inside of you. And so that fuel source can get cut off at any moment.
Right.
Because it's not yours. And so I learned that my fuel source has to come from inside of me. And so,
how do you deal with not showing up as well as you did a day before? How do you avoid beating yourself up?
just understanding that it's part of the process. We're going to have good days. We're going to have bad days. Nothing is just a straight line. Like, if you think of nature, I don't know that there are any straight lines in nature. Everything is, to some degree, going to be a wave. That's what energy is, right? It's waves. And so, just knowing that we are energy, our life and our experience is not always going to be positive, but also it's not always going to be negative. Like, there's that pendulum effect that's constantly happening in our lives. And so it just comes with the territory of being a human and living in this experience. And knowing that in that moment, I was doing my best. Even if I look at it and I'm like, that really wasn't my best. Like, I could have done so much better.
Right.
But in reality, it was my best in that moment because that's the way that I showed up. And it took a while to get to that space too, to be able to look at things that didn't go the way that I intended them to, or actually the expectations that I set for them. Because then I had a perceived outcome that I didn't reach. And that's whenever you start to beat yourself up. And so I guess to get more into the heart of that, it's just living more with intention and less rigidity. Bruce Lee has a good way of looking at that. You've heard, be like water, right? water is always ready. So if you have water in a container and you poke holes in the container, instantly the water is going to flow out. It's ready, right? Letting everything just flow. So having enough tension, which is force being applied, but also balance and relaxation. And so for me, everything's just all about balance and flow.
Yeah, that was a big like self-love has always been difficult for me. I've always been very hard on myself. And it was that realization that I am doing my absolute best. I'm trying to be as good as I can be.
Yeah.
And like you said, there are moments where I feel like I don't hit that mark. But going back and being like, okay, but even in that moment, that is what I wanted. I was trying to be my absolute best.
Mm-hmm.
That's given me a lot of peace.
Yeah, it's just the acknowledgement and saying, hey, I see you. Like, it's okay. It's self-love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a big act of self-love. Like, we ask people all the time, like, what is self-love to you? And that's a hard question.
I remember the first
for
time
a lot of people.
you said that in one of the breathwork sessions, and I was like, I don't know. Because you were like, what is it really? Like, how could you show yourself love? And I was like, I don't know. I can't.
And now you have so many different ways of understanding of what self-love is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What has that been like for you, that journey?
The journey of self-love? Ooh, full of so much growth, so much pain, so much heartache. Again, it goes back to attachment and to, trying to burn fuel that doesn't belong to me, that's outside of me. It's making other people my world instead of building my own world from the inside. And so I've been married twice, and I've been engaged a third time. And the common thing throughout all of those is that I didn't really know who I was. And I was constantly searching for external validation and external love, because at some point along the way, and I actually identified it through breathwork, I learned that I'm responsible for other people's feelings, and that no matter what I do, I'm never going to be enough. And I didn't know that until a big breathwork journey that I went on. And then from that moment, my whole life just shifted and changed. I was able to release that, what I call energetic anchor. And once I was no longer tethered to that energetic anchor, then I was free. I was free to act and be who I wanted to be and discover who I was again. Because when you are constantly needing someone else to make you feel loved and to give you the parts of yourself that you can't give yourself, like you're never able to relax. You're always feeling like you have to do something, because doing is what earns you the right to feel loved. And so it was in those moments and at that time that I learned, like, I'm enough just because of the amazing person that I am. And the more that I love myself, the more that love is just going to be felt by everybody else. And so that was a big shift.
Yeah. I've definitely been there with relationships where, like, I felt as if this person was the source of my happiness. And without them, I don't have happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And that puts so much pressure on the relationship, on the person, on myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, that person doesn't deserve all that pressure. And the thing is, we don't recognize when we're in that state, we have no clue that person, that we're putting all that pressure on that person. And they may not even know it, but they feel it. And then if they can't communicate how much pressure they're feeling because of it, that's when stuff starts to break down and deteriorate. And so my last relationship where I was engaged, like, she actually was very good at communicating, hey, I need you to have your own space. Hey, I need you to have your own hobbies. Hey, I need you to do this. But conceptually, I couldn't make it happen. I understood what she was saying. I acknowledged what she was saying. But there was something that made it to where I just couldn't do it. And it wasn't until after Breathwork that I finally was able to release that. It was really interesting. A lot of huge somatic, cathartic releases through Breathwork. And
was there was like one moment, like a moment in Breathwork, like one session where that happened?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's been so many other moments that have just like shaken up my everything, which is why I chose to go down the path of teaching people breathwork. Like, I almost did it 10 years ago with Buteyko breathwork. I was like, I need to teach people this. This is amazing. But it was never enough. And part of that was because I didn't believe in myself enough to take on such a big venture and put everything into me, even though everything I do succeeds. But for some reason, that was really hard. That was really hard. And I couldn't make that jump. And so I stuck with what I was already doing because it was comfortable. Just like the relationship. I stuck with it because it was comfortable. Even though I wasn't happy, I still stuck with it because it was a known uncomfortable versus the unknown of me being on my own, or me going down that, making that huge life decision of doing business just on my own and something that I've never done.
Yeah. Do you take successes for granted, or did you?
Take successes for granted.
As in, you succeed in something, but you never really give yourself credit, and it kind of falls behind as if, like, yeah, that just happened, but...
I celebrated in the moment, for sure, but I've never been one to live on past success. So, and I never made it a huge goal. Like, winning wasn't always like my only thing. So that's one thing that I've been blessed with, and I got that from my parents. It's more about the process than it is the end goal. So I loved winning, but I wasn't obsessed like a lot of people around me were. I still got upset, and I would, self-critique all of the different ways that I could have done better in those moments to help us get to a point of winning, or help myself get to a point, because I've competed with teams and I've competed individual. And so, yeah, I've gone through all of that. But
what are all the different things you've competed in?
I mean, going back through childhood, all the sports, and then powerlifting, competed in what's it called?
What were your numbers
for powerlifting?
Yeah,
I did it my junior year, and I'm pretty sure I did it because there was a really cute girl who was lifting in the gym during football, like afterwards.
Cute powerlifting. And
I was like,
girl.
oh, she's cute. And then I was like, what are you lifting for? She was powerlifting. I was like, oh, that sounds fun. And I've always been stronger than what I should be, like compared to people my size, weight. Just had a very natural build for that kind of stuff. And so my first year, my only year, one season, I think I was 135 128 weight class
Mm-hmm.
in high school, junior year. And then I think bench was 225. My deadlift was I think it was 335. And then my squat was like 265, 275, something like that.
Yeah.
And so it was good. It wasn't like I qualified for semifinals, like in regionals, but I didn't make it to state, I don't think. There was always this one guy in my weight class that would just destroy me every time. I was like, I don't even know how you do that. And then there's this one kid in like the 115 weight class, just like this skinny black kid, and his form was so impeccable that he was beating everybody's top weights, going up like 30 or 40 pounds above him.
Dang.
It was insane. He was like 115, and I think he deadlifted 450. It was ridiculous, and his squat was like close to 400, 380. I was like, what is this kid doing? Yeah.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I think my body is built well for deadlift.
I can see that.
Because I have pretty short legs,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know why, but it just seems like
Yeah.
squatting is harder for me. Benching is okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm short, so everybody like, you have less less to
Yeah, right, like less
Yeah, you don't
distance
have to
to go.
yeah, less distance to go off your chest or to get off the ground. All the guys would constantly tease me about that. And I was always like, well, you have more space to build muscle.
Yeah.
So
you
get
more.
on it.
When have you failed in the past?
Oh,
And
all
how?
the time.
What's one that you really learned from? And if you can like dig into the moment when you were like, I failed.
I think the biggest one and the most recent one and the one that it made the most significant impact on my life was when I failed at really being a father. There were, again, like we've established, in relationships I would give so much of myself that I would lose sight of who I was. And there were choices that I made that didn't allow my son to feel like he was first. And it got to a point to where, and this was the moment that just shifted everything. I still, like, I loved him. He knew I loved him. And when we hung out, it was just always with the family, right? So it was with her two kids, and then me and my son and her. And I never gave him any individual time. And he didn't even have his own room for like a year and a half. And that was a whole different thing that I was trying to navigate with her, but the whole thing made it to where he didn't feel like he was a priority, and he didn't want to come over to the house when it was my time, because we split custody, his mom and I. And so he said, I don't want to come over tomorrow. And my heart just dropped, because he's never said that. And we've always had a really great relationship, but it was one of those things that he had just carried for so long. In the beginning it was okay, but the longer it went on and the less I did, basically, the more he started to feel it, until just one day he was like, I don't want to come over there. And that was a wake-up call for me to really like pop open again and be like, okay, what am I doing right now that is causing him to feel this way? And then he and I had a big heart-to-heart, and he shared, like, all the things. He's like, I don't feel like I fit in there. I feel like, you know, the kids are always, they have their own space, and I don't. Like, I just don't feel like I belong, and I don't like being in that space. And so then I got my own space, and him and I reconnected on even deeper levels than we ever able were to before. And so now we have a really amazing relationship, to where he opens up and he shares things with me. Like, he has a ton of respect. But it goes both ways. Like, in that moment, I shared with him, like, all the ways that I was acknowledging that I failed, for him to get to that point. And that was huge, because he was able to see me as a human, as opposed to just a father. And I think that's one of the big things, is in everything that we do, whether it's coaching, you know, social media, parenting, friends, it's being real. It's being authentic, not just in your authentic expression of yourself, but allowing people to see that you don't have all of your shit together. Because especially in that moment, if I would have tried to cover up all the different ways and make excuses, that would have just pushed him away even more. Because then I'm not taking responsibility for the way that I showed up, and the whole part of the situation that I had control over. So I think that's probably one of my biggest failures. Yeah.
That's something I've been going through, is recognizing that my parents are people. And like making that transition between, like, these are my parents versus, oh, these are just other people who I now have a relationship with.
Have they shown the human parts of being real with you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We've talked, because as any parents, they have their regrets and, like, oh, I wish I'd done this differently. And so hearing those sides of them and understanding more about what went into raising all of us definitely made it more human. And being at an age where, so I'm 24, so I'm not at the point yet, but, like, imagining that I could have kids and being like, okay, this being me having kids, that was them.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I always imagined, like, they were parents before they were parents, but, like, no, they weren't. They were just humans who decided, okay, we'll have kids, and they didn't know what they're doing. Nobody does.
Yeah.
So,
have you ever imagined them as kids?
not really. No.
So think about all the things that still stick with you as a kid, right? The things that you're trying to let go of. Some of the things that have them in it, and, you know, some of the things that don't. They had all those same experiences and more. And so it's neat to see them as more than just parents. Like, oh, you were humans and you had real life experiences, but then it's like a whole nother level to be like, and you were kids, and you also had some traumatic experiences and ways that your parents didn't show up for you, and, like, ways that life presented you some hardships. And
yeah. So what did you take from that quote unquote failure beyond just your relationship with your son? Were you able to see similar patterns?
Oh yeah.
Outside of that?
Yeah. It was just me not choosing myself and my mission statement, right? It was the lack of clarity around the way that I truly wanted to live my life. Because in those moments, I was always a really good human, always had a really big heart, but it was the lack of love that I could give myself, and just giving up parts of myself, and not speaking whenever I should have spoke, and not acting when I should have acted, and not enforcing boundaries when I shouldn't have enforced boundaries, and not sticking true to my values whenever I should have stuck to my values. And it's a slippery slope, because at some point after you've done that for so long, it just becomes normal, right? And then it's not until you actually get to take a step back and see everything from a different vantage point that you're like, oh, okay, all those different places. I was not choosing myself or my son or my family, or like I wasn't loving myself because I didn't know how. Yeah. And so just in those moments, having grace and being like, you were doing the best that you could with what you had and what you knew and what you were truly aware of. And I call awareness a superpower, because it's the one thing that gives you the opportunity to make a choice in every situation. Without that awareness, if you don't know, like truly know that you're showing up in that way, or someone else is doing something or whatever it is, then you can't make a decision on it because you don't know. It's not knowledge. You're not aware of it. And so once you have the awareness, then that's where you get to create different outcomes. But you need to have the courage to be able to do that at the same time. And so there were probably moments that I did have awareness, but I wasn't in a place to where I could do anything with that awareness. It was just wasted information.
Do you have a recommendation for how to take yourself out of a situation in a way, like take a step back and really see what is happening?
Yes. So it's the act of playing through a scenario that's currently happening, whatever that may be, seeing it from your perspective and honoring all of the way that your feelings are showing up, your thoughts, then completely taking that person, you, moving them to the side, and then going into the other person's point of view and seeing and feeling everything from their point of view, right? Because there's two sides to everything. Really, there's three, maybe even more. But there's at least three sides. We always talk about there being two to tango, two sides. That's true. But then there's a third side. There's a third side that's the observer, the one that doesn't have any kind of emotional or energetic attachment to what is going on. Mm-hmm. And so first you allow yourself to really soak in and feel everything that you're going through. And then you go into the other person's experience and soak in everything that they're going through the best that you can, because again, you can only process with what you're aware of and what you know, but you have a good understanding, right? Try and take your thoughts and perceptions out of it just so it can be what their experience is to the best of your ability. And then you put both of them aside and you go into the observer role. And you look at it from that space without any emotion attached. And from there, you have three different scenarios now, and you can feel into what is best for the way that you want to show up. And for me, it's always like what feels best in my heart. Like I try to live every moment from my heart, using my heart as essentially my compass, right? So taking the brain out of it and going into like, how does this really feel? And feel without attachment, feel without guilt, feel without shame. How do I want to show up? How do I want this outcome to be? What am I going to be happy with, like truly happy with?
Reva's having a nightmare.
Reva knows.
Reva.
She's reliving.
Yeah, so that seems like another, almost like with the breath, where it's like just remembering that, being like when you're faced with a decision, or when you're going through a situation and you're just kind of unconsciously moving along, taking that second, like having that almost pattern set up where you like stop and like ask yourself,
yeah,
is this what my heart wants?
And through the breath, it's a lot easier to do, because when you focus on each breath in and each breath out, and you're trying to kind of quiet your mind, there's going to be a lot of things that rush in. And then you'll get to a place to where you're just focusing on your breath and you're listening to your breath. And you become less attached to what is going on and more connected with yourself. And there's still going to be thoughts that come in. Like, we're never really thoughtless. Our brain is constantly making things happen.
Mm-hmm.
But you can get to a much more silent place and a much deeper connection with who you really are and what your real voice is that is trying to be heard. And I feel that's going to come through your heart.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been like, I think it was last week one day, I had been super distracted for like a week straight, where I was like constantly having something going on, or I was like watching YouTube. Like that's one of my vices. And I had done my laundry and I had to put it away. And I had a moment where I was like, oh, I want to listen to music. And then I was like, no, let me just sit with this brain of mine for a moment. And yeah, I had so much coming up. It was like crazy how many thoughts I had come up, how many impulses I had,
Mm-hmm.
and just letting those be.
Why do you think so much came up in that moment?
Because I had been distracting myself so much and not letting those things be. Like anytime I had some stress or some just discomfort, I had rushed to use something to push it away.
Yeah. And the phone's an easy thing.
So easy.
So easy. It's right there. It's just.
So since then, I've been trying to give myself more of that time of just not having anything.
What does that look like for you?
So before you got here, I did a workout,
Mm-hmm.
and I just opened a Google Doc. So I have my kettlebells. I would do a set of something, and then I just type out my thoughts.
Okay.
Sometimes when I wake up, I try to give myself at least 10 minutes of just nothing. Not even like meditating, just think about whatever.
Yeah.
But just have it be quiet.
Okay.
So things like that.
Yeah. I think that's perfect. I do the same thing, where the first 10 minutes, and a lot of times I'll go into like a form of meditation where, and I mean, essentially it's just quiet is meditation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just whatever you want to call it, but I'll do that for 10 or 15, 20 minutes every morning.
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful way to allow the deep connection to yourself to really come forward. Because of the brain waves that you're in, like the state that you're in, you have more access to like those pure, deep, unconscious or subconscious thoughts. Yeah.
It's usually I'll try to stack the two. So I'll do like a 10 minutes of just, there's no purpose to this. There's no like goal at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Just sit with whatever comes up.
Just wherever your mind goes, let it go.
And then that will usually spin out all my thoughts, and like then I get to a point where I can kind of have like a more focused meditation where I'm trying to pay attention to my
Mhm.
breath or whatever it is.
Yeah, the sound of the AC or
Mhm.
whatever. Yeah. Have you ever tried to put visualization to the act of letting your thoughts come?
There was one I heard, one guided meditation that was using, I think it was either like bubbles or balloons, and it would just be like every time a thought comes up, just imagine it closes off and then poof, like goes out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is that something you do?
Yeah. I don't have a hard time going to sleep. I usually fall asleep very quickly. But a lot of people that I work with have a hard time going to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I found is helpful is to do a similar thing, whether it's bubbles or balloons, or taking your thought and, envisioning a stream and, placing each thought in the stream. And when it hits the stream, it just floats away. Putting it in a box, like you can create your own custom box, like walk yourself through that process. Or a bag, like a Santa Claus bag that is never ending. And so there's a lot of different visualization scenarios that you can create, but the concept is allowing each thought to just come, and then just taking the thought and looking at it for a second and be like, hey, how's it going? I'm going to put you in here for right now. And then take another thought and take another thought until all of your thoughts have had an opportunity to be seen and acknowledged. And then from there, you release any attachment to them for now. And it works beautiful for going into a meditation because, right, that moment that you give yourself time, everything floods in because it's like, I've been waiting.
It's like, finally.
Finally. But also going to bed because we keep ourselves busy so much. Yeah. And then right before bed, we get in bed and we're like, shit, I have to do this and I have to do this and I didn't do this and I don't know, and everything starts piling up. And just, it's an act of self-love to go through that process and then allow yourself to just drift away into sleep, knowing that everything you mentally accounted for, you just put off to the side. That's the big thing. Instead of letting it float away like in a bubble or a balloon before bed or in a stream, a lot of times it'll be putting it in a Santa Claus bag or a pretty box that was created just in my mind or my client's mind, and having them put that in the box, knowing that it's safe to stay there and go to sleep as well, and that if I need to revisit you in the morning, I will. And that's just giving yourself another layer of safety, of knowing that it's not really going away if it doesn't need to. If it's important, it'll still be in the morning when you actually are refreshed and have energy and the mental faculties to take care of it all in the time. Right now, it's just time to go to bed.
Yeah, I'll do so maybe like 2 years ago, I started doing a writing practice where I just write one page in a little notepad every day. And then at some point, it became a before bed activity. I think in the beginning, it was just like I forgot to do it, and I was like, oh, I got to do it today. And so then every day I would forget, and then I would do it right before bed. And now I've just accepted that this is just what I do before bed.
Yeah.
And I think similarly, that gives my mind the ease of like everything gets out.
Yep.
And there's nothing I need to be thinking about right now.
You give yourself permission because you acknowledged it. It's no longer the scary thing or the hidden thing or the shameful thing, like, oh, fuck, I didn't do it. It's, oh, yeah, see, I didn't do it. I'm going to come back to you. Yeah. Even if you don't, it's okay. Yeah, I call that, especially whenever it's in written form, the brain dump.
Yeah.
Just dump everything out of your brain so that you don't have to hold on to it.
Right.
That stuff gets heavy.
Yes, give it a break. Yeah. What is something you're struggling with right now?
Struggling with right now. I think balance is always a little bit of a struggle to some degree. And I don't even really like to use the word struggle because that's like, it's like I'm actively fighting with it. It's more of a relationship. It's like I'm trying to find a good balance to where I can meet it and meet myself at the same time. And with that, it's just the easy distractions on the phone. I mean, it's super simple.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm going to set my alarm right before bed, and then it's like, oh, but let me check this real quick, and then, oh, let me check this, and then 20 minutes goes by, and so now it's just like the awareness part. Whenever that pops up, it's like, oh, I know what you're doing. You're trying to stay up later. Okay, now I know. I can come back to you tomorrow because nothing is going to be gone by the time I wake up in 8 hours. It's still going to be there.
Yeah.
And so it's the superpower of awareness that I'm just trying to hone into more and just give myself the grace. And, you know, sometimes I'll be like, okay, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is, like just let it all go.
Do your thing. Yeah.
Yeah, do your thing. But it's just so accessible. And so that's one of the biggest things is, and I don't do it very often. It's usually the hardest at bed. Or like when I go to the restroom, I'm like, let me take my newspaper. And then I'm like scrolling the newspaper. I'm like, shit, not really. But like, dang, I need to put this down and go get back to work. Or whatever it is I'm supposed to be doing in that moment. Yeah.
Do you have any ways of making it less accessible for yourself?
I will put my phone in a different room a lot of the times, and I almost exclusively have my phone on silent and do not disturb. So that it's just not there.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if I'm with people. If I'm with people, then I'm seldom ever on my phone, just out of respect for that, just me being present.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to get on my phone for a minute and do my thing. And it depends on, you know, what the situation is, like with people. Like, am I there just to hang out with them? Is it a 3 or 4 hour thing? Like, am I just here for an hour or two? Like all those little things. But usually whenever I'm around people, then I'm seldom on my phone. And that's a big thing. And then whenever I know I have to get work done, content creation or program writing or, you know, creating things for clients, then I'll put my phone in a different spot. And every 30 minutes to an hour, I'll give myself a break. And I'll go look. Or I won't even look at any of the notifications. I'll just go to Instagram and scroll or something along those lines. Yeah, just try and be easy with it, but not something that is extremely rigid as well. Just because I like the even flow of balance and not putting too much restriction on anything, because when you have a lot of restriction, then you can't have flow, right? And so it's just relying on myself to have awareness and creating the intentions and like the little agreements with myself.
And when you do, for me, when I've had restrictions on things, when the restriction is lifted,
Mm-hmm.
I go so far in the other direction.
Yeah.
So that's been a thing with food for me. If I
Sure.
restrict myself, then as soon as there's no more rules, I overeat, or I eat shitty
Mm-hmm.
food. And so I'm trying to find that balance in a lot of areas too, of like, how do I make the right decisions for the right reasons?
Sure.
Not because I'm forcing myself to do it.
Well, and then like you can create a mission statement around your fitness too, if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do you want your body to look this way? And why do you want to have this and this? Like, and that can be an outline, because it creates more of a life adjustment than it does a mental adjustment, right? Like fitness is a lifestyle choice.
Mm-hmm.
And then so you can create not solid, rigid constructs around it, but more of like reminders in a solid form, you know?
What would that look like?
So what are your goals for your body, for fitness, for all of it?
I would like to... I want to always be able to move freely.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, like, do any sport if I wanted to. maintain a low body fat and yeah, just like the way that I look.
Okay. So it sounds like you want to have a body that is able to withstand pretty much anything you throw at it, to have a fully functioning body that also you're happy to look at, so in those two scenarios, it's one's aesthetic and one's performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing that those are two things that you have intentions for with your body, aesthetically and physically, performance-wise, to be a certain way, what are things that you know work to get that?
Consistently working out.
Okay.
Consistently moving.
Mm-hmm.
Consistently doing different types of exercise.
Okay.
And eating healthy foods in moderation.
Mm-hmm. So when you put yourself on a restricted diet, what does that look like?
So in the past, it has been like, so for example, I had a jiu-jitsu tournament in early 2023, and I signed up for a weight class that was like 10 pounds below my weight at the time, and I had like 2 months. And so basically every day I was like, I can only eat 2,500 calories. And I was training a lot. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was probably
burning 4,000,
like
5,000.
Yeah, a lot of calories every day. And so 2,500 was what I would eat. So that kind of restriction.
Is that a normal type of restriction, or is it just whenever there's like an event that you're trying to achieve?
I've had similar ones to that. Yeah, leading up before that.
Okay. So usually those kind of restrictions are around events, like competitions of some sort.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Like I've had other restrictions like that were
Mhm.
not.
Gotcha. Okay. So in order to create more of a flow with all of that, it would be setting up your mission statement along the same lines. So what do you feel would be something in a sentence, maybe a run-on sentence, that highlights the most important parts of why you want to have a healthy body?
When I have a healthy body, I feel better.
Mm-hmm.
I feel better about myself. And I feel more capable.
Okay. So your mission statement could be something along the lines of, I show up every day with my health and fitness as a priority so that I can do and achieve all the things that I desire. And that's just like a general statement of, now anytime you get into a space where you're trying to question, like, oh, do I really want to eat this? Then you're like, okay, does this go with my mission statement? If it doesn't, but you still want to eat it, it's okay. It's just, like with your bank account, it's the same kind of concept. I have $100 today to spend. So do I want to spend $25 on this cheesecake? Cool, that just means I only have $75 to spend the rest of the day. Like,
Right.
It doesn't mean that you can't. It just means that when you do, you have to make a little bit of adjustment to fill in the rest of what's needed for that day or for that week or for that month or whatever it is, however you want to kind of categorize everything. And so it's just with that philosophy of allowing yourself to have flexibility, but just knowing that, it's going to get a little bit tighter in this space for the rest of the day, or like the next 4 hours, whatever it is. The next time I eat, I'm not going to be able to have cheesecake. Like, not a big deal. Or you only have a sliver of cheesecake instead of a whole piece, so you're still getting the experience. Mm-hmm. So it's just giving yourself flexibility and constantly remembering the reason why you want to have a nice body. You want to have a physically fit body. And from that space, then you don't have to have any kind of guilt around it, because you're leaving open flexibility. Like, you're acknowledging and willingly, like, giving yourself permission to have it, just having the awareness of knowing that it can only be in moderation.
Right. So it's not like I'm going against myself or doing it behind my back.
Exactly. Like, you're being very open and transparent with yourself.
And that's where I can go off and get in, like, the fuck it mentality, where it's like, I ate a little bit of cheesecake, fuck it. Like,
exactly.
Eat a whole.
Because you're attaching an emotional judgment to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's a little bit of guilt or shame around it, and then it's hard to come back from that. It's like, well, fuck it. I already ruined the day.
Right.
Might as well eat 6 cookies.
Right. And it's the shame is what is keeping me from doing it in the first place. So then as soon as I break that,
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I crack that seal, then it's like, okay,
yeah,
I already have the shame. So,
but if you already give yourself permission and it's coming from a loving place, then there's no room for shame.
mm-hmm.
And it's that loving, compassionate side that is going to help you grow through and stay consistent. Yeah. You're helping yourself be your best self, like the best version of yourself, but an actual higher version of the best version of yourself than whenever you are allowing shame to come in.
Yeah. How do you balance extrinsic and intrinsic motivation?
So, internal versus external, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
They're both there, for sure. But I try to rely more on internal than external. Like, it's just, it goes back to everything else we've been talking about. Like, we can use external stimuli for a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it's not anything to do with us. And so going back into my why is a big part of my motivation. And like, externally, it has to still complement my why. Otherwise, it's just not worth it. So I've created a lot of scenarios in my world to where it complements what I'm already doing, and it doesn't go against what I want to be doing. So then it takes away from more of the need to have an external stimulus in order to get something done, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's creating more of a life in alignment that allows me to be more intrinsic than having to rely on extrinsic. Is that what? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, I think that makes perfect sense. It's because you can't just have the external things like guiding you in the right direction if the internal is off, because then everything is a fight. Yeah, everything is you forcing yourself to do it because of something outside.
Yeah, and it goes more into the, like, it's more also about the belief in knowing whenever you start talking about that, like the internal versus external, same kind of thing. But yeah, it's just the more in alignment you can have everything with, the easier it's going to be, and the less you have to rely on that external motivation.
What day-to-day habits have you found to most increase your quality of life?
Breathing. Yeah, breathing with intention.
Okay, let me ask you one thing quick. What, other than like your intentional breathing, like moments throughout the day, do you do like breathwork sessions for yourself regularly?
Sometimes I go through phases where I do breathwork sessions for myself. I'm always doing some. Usually it's my daily practice of just consciously intentional breathing. And I do, as I'm sitting with myself in the morning, it's just really focusing on my breath. Sometimes I'll incorporate specific breathwork modalities in that.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of what I do is meditation is a big part of it. Journaling is a big part of it. I have, referencing back to my, I'm drawing a blank. We just talked about it. Mission statement. I was like, my reason why. Yeah, my mission statement is a big part. A lot of awareness things. And then my, what I call 369 agreements. So I have 36 agreements that I read out loud to myself every morning. And that's essentially the way that I want to show up, in the version that I want to show up. And I'll do that I'll try to do that between 6 and 9 times a day. But at the very least, I'll do it every morning.
Okay. Can you explain that more? So it's
like it's almost like my own creation of how I want to show up in life. Like what I am, acknowledging what I am, like self-affirmation, but also speaking to the way that I want to show up. And so it's like creating that, like just highlighting and reinforcing that part of me, or those parts of me. So it's like, I am worthy. I am love. I breathe creation into other people's lives. I live through my heart. I trust myself. I'm safe. I'm divine. Like just a lot of I am statements and other statements that embody who I am and the version of myself that I'm growing into, that I already believe myself to be. And so that's a big part of it. And then I have a morning prayer that I adopted from a friend of mine in the breathwork world a few years ago. And that is basically, it's a gratitude section with a section of how I want my life to look. And then there's some quotes in there that kind of help shape the way that I think and the way that I view the world and my life. And so there's a number of different sections in that, but it's all around just the acknowledgement of who I am, who I want to be, and how I want to show up.
I was just talking to a friend the other day about praying, and so I'm an atheist. I'm not religious, but I was with my girlfriend's family. We went out to dinner last weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and they did a prayer before we ate. And talking with my friend about it, he was like, "It's actually like it's basically like a gratitude thing. Mm-hmm. It's like, thank you for all of this. Thank you for putting us through this day, and like all of the great things we have in our life."
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's something that is so well built into a lot of religion that I didn't realize.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to take that, still be able to use that part of it.
Gratitude's huge.
Yeah.
It is so huge. It's hard. So you've heard me say this in my breathwork sessions, that gratitude breeds love. And then I'll say love breeds gratitude. Like they kind of both go hand in hand. And so when you have gratitude, even for the smallest things, it's naturally going to lift you up. And acknowledging the things that you're thankful are huge. Speaking into my water. So I do molecular hydrogen tablet every morning, and then I do chlorophyll water every morning, and I speak into both of them. And then I'll drink it because of the energy that it takes in from my words and my emotions behind that. Then I'm now consuming it, right? And it's another way of acknowledging myself and, you know, acknowledging the spiritual world and the divine connection. So when you say you're atheist, does that mean you don't believe there is a creator, or you don't believe in religion?
I don't believe in any,
Okay.
in a creator. I believe in a physical reality.
A physical reality.
Yeah.
Okay. So you believe that this human experience is a real human physical experience. And beyond that, there's no belief of anything that created this human experience. It's
Correct.
okay. So in that sense, you can still have gratitude for everything that's showing up in your human experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been kind of a fun game being in spiritual like circles and being around it and being like, how can I still take all of this?
Yeah.
How can I use all of the gems here?
I think in that scenario, if I was to put myself into your space, it's all still applicable. It's
Mhm.
just, instead of attaching anything else to it, like, you're just connecting yourself to it.
A lot of the time when I think about, like, for example, in the breathwork sessions, when we talk about a higher self,
Yeah.
a higher being, I sometimes imagine it as my subconscious brain.
Yeah.
Because it is something, I think our subconscious mind is somewhat aware.
Sure.
Or it could be. I don't know
Uh-huh.
if it is. I like to imagine that there's like a consciousness in there that is separate from us.
Mhm.
I think that's so cool.
That
And
is
so I
it.
imagine myself, that is the higher part of myself.
Okay.
And I'm asking it for what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Because it controls so much of me. Like, the subconscious mind is what is feeding us thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And so having some respect towards that.
Yeah.
And realizing that it plays a huge role
Mm-hmm.
in how we show up,
Yeah,
who we are.
That's a beautiful way to create that same kind of experience for yourself by attaching that subconscious as that higher version.
Mhm.
Yeah. I like that.
What is your belief like?
My
look
belief?
like? Mhm.
It's interesting because there are all these different religions, and they're all trying to kind of say and do the same thing, just with different perceptions that have been placed on them, different understandings of what is, in large part, a lot of the same ideologies, right?
Mhm.
I believe that there is a creator that is so beyond our ability to even be perceived that we can't really explain what it is. Like God, essentially. But I don't necessarily think that it's God as in, you know, the way Christianity believes it, or the way Catholicism or Hinduism, or like, I think that it's probably a combination of all of them. That's just we're always trying to make sense of everything.
Mhm.
And so I think the belief. I think that religion, like actual like religion, churches and Hinduism, all of that, that's just a way of us trying to understand, put an understanding and human words into something that is pretty much not able to be understood.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I do believe that there's something, some entity out there that created everything, because to me it doesn't make sense that something could exist without anything to create its existence.
So for you, is it this creator created the universe, or this creator created life, or it created humans and they're like fully fledged? Where do you see this creator coming into play? Or is it
I
this
think
creator
all
is
encompassing, created everything. Created the universe, all the universes, because we have multiple, right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, created humans, created like everything that's connected to our perception of this reality.
So in what way do you mean they created humans? Do you see what I'm asking? Like, is it like Adam and Eve? Or is it like it
I think it's more on a
created the environment for humans to evolve?
it,
Or is
it created the ability for us to create a construct within we live. So, like your human consciousness, right? That deep thing deep inside, wherever
thing
it
that
is.
feels like me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Where did that come from?
So that I think it's an emergent
An immersion?
phenomenon. It emerged.
Okay. So what was there before it?
I think before, so I believe in like evolution. So at some point there became another side, right? So there's the physical side of things, and then there's the side which is the experience of being.
Okay.
Which is kind of outside of that. And at some point that came around where something felt like it was like there was an experience. There was an experience of being that thing. Some animal or some cell, like something had, and it probably was a very like simple experience, but it had an experience. And that, I believe, was like the first version of consciousness. And then I think in certain species it just evolved more.
So do you think all species, animal species, have a consciousness?
I don't know. I'm not sure how to even measure that or how to know if something is conscious or not.
Do plants have consciousness?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely possible in my mind, because
they're
again,
living.
it's the fact that you could say something about what it is like to be that plant.
Mm-hmm.
If they have an experience, then I think that would mean that they're conscious.
So anything with a conscious has a spirit too, right?
That's where I don't know if I believe in a spirit outside of, again, the physical.
Okay. So soul and spirit, are they different?
I'm thinking of those as the same thing.
Soul and spirit are the same.
But also I think spirit is a good word that can be used, but it's also very unclear.
Mm-hmm.
It can have many different meanings.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think spirit can be a good word to describe that thing we're talking about, which is like the thing deep in you that is like, oh, this is me. This is what it feels like to be me.
So does your consciousness, your human body dies, does your consciousness live and come back in something else? So where
Not
does
in
your
my belief.
consciousness go? It just dies with your human body? But if it is a being, if it is created in existence on its own, where did the body come from? If the consciousness was created before the body.
Oh, so you're saying my human consciousness? I think that emerged. That came with my brain.
It came with your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So humans are able to create a consciousness out of their sperm and the DNA that's inside of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know at which point. Are sperm conscious?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and everything is just a theory, honestly, because
Right.
nobody knows.
There's a theory, I think it's called like the zombie something theory, which is that you are the only conscious being. And everyone else is like a soulless, just
They're all NPCs.
Yes, exactly. Which that's kind of fascinating too.
Yeah.
I don't believe that, but it's like, what if?
So you're just essentially having a conversation with yourself right now.
No. So I am having like, basically it's saying that in my experience, which this could be you too, about me, I am just I have a whole brain. It does everything, but there is no consciousness. There's nothing, like you could like torture me and like, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
There's no one really suffering.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many different theories.
So many.
They're so very interesting.
Yeah. I like to think that, so I had a friend put on an event where a Swami came and talked to the whole group, and we did chants.
And what is that?
A Swami is a teacher inside Hinduism.
Okay.
So that teaches the philosophies and religious part of Hinduism. And he is a monk, and he lives in a monk way at monasteries, and then he'll go and he'll live among people and share knowledge, and then he teaches other monks. I think that's what makes him a Swami, is that he teaches other monks how to be a monk, essentially, about life in Hinduism. But what he was saying is that, and this made a lot of sense to me, is that the soul and the mind are the only thing that remains after the human body leaves, and that then it can come back in reincarnation into other things.
Is there a distinction there between soul and mind?
They're separate, but they the mind resides in the soul. So he said it's like when you have a glass of milk, if you pour water into it, the milk doesn't become the water and the water doesn't become the milk, but they're in the same glass, in the same space. And so that's what he says. The mind is what has memories, which is why, so a lot of what is talked about in spirituality is that we're just trying to remember who we are. That when we came into this world, we already knew who we were, but it was the human experience that has taken away the remembering portion, because we've had so many different experiences layered on top and layered on top and layered on top, and we've been hurt, and we've had sadness, and we've had happiness, and all of these things go to create our new perception and hide a lot of what we really are. And it's the act of remembering that gets us back into that space. And the remembering part, what are we remembering? Right? Where does the remembering come from?
Yeah.
And so the consciousness, the soul, the mind are they brand new? They've never had any experience prior to this, but they were just automatically downloaded with all the knowledge of what? Was it just passed down from one human to another? But then where did that first human get the knowledge from? Right? Like, so it's interesting to think, but I like the idea of reincarnation, how you can come back and how you've lived past lives. And it makes sense. There's a lot of people that talk about, past life regression and being able to remember different parts of different lives. And that all, it intrigues me.
So is this memory separate from the memory of like, oh, yesterday I had this for dinner? It's like a different
current reality
kind of memory.
Yeah, it's like the memory of everything. You know how things just kind of pop into your mind and you're like, oh, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Like it's a download of something that you've never really heard before or said before, but it just automatically feels like reality and truth. And so that's the same kind of thing. So I don't know, there's a lot of different ideas out there, but that's one that I believe in. I believe that there is a divine consciousness, like the consciousness, and we're all just replications of that consciousness.
Do you believe there's a way to bridge? Do you think in your consciousness, are you alone in it, or is there a way that you can somehow connect to other ones?
I'm sure that, I know people who can connect to other people without being in the same room state.
But even if you were in the same room.
Yeah. Without being in the same room, without being in the same house, without being in the same state, they can connect to them. They can communicate with them.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's not something that I personally can say that I do, but I've had a number of people be able to say that they, and it's like, I've felt certain things about people and then called and it just, they're like, oh my God, it was perfect timing. I really needed to hear your voice. I really needed to hear this, whatever it was. Like, where does that come from? Some sort of connection. Intuition, I think, is a big part of your consciousness. What part? I don't know. But, our intuition, that internal guidance, that GPS, the thing that tells you things that you maybe shouldn't know. Like, there's a lot there.
What does your dream life look like?
My dream life.
Is there anything missing from it right now?
Right now, I think it's just helping more people learn that it's okay to love themselves. That you don't have to be stuck in the life that you have. You don't have to settle. Teaching more people how to breathe. And just teaching more, not even teaching. Like the breathing part, yeah, I guess there's a little bit of teaching, but then teaching to the point that they don't ever need me again. That's really what it is. Guiding, I guess, would be a better term for it. Helping people remember that they have choices. But as far as a perfect life, like, I'm living a pretty great life right now. There's lots of love around me. There's lots of love in me. There's a lot of beauty everywhere. So could there be more? Absolutely. Yeah. Would I like more? Sure. Bring it on.
Yeah, that's something I thought about recently, because I think I asked someone that question. And then I was like, there's nothing really missing.
Mm-hmm.
Other than maybe like my perception of it. It's like if I just had more gratitude for what I do have,
Mm-hmm.
this could be my dream life already.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. And I think that's a beautiful way to see things. It's like what I have is enough. What I have is perfect. And if I get more, beautiful. It doesn't take away from how 10 seconds ago or 10 minutes ago or 10 months ago wasn't perfect. It was perfect in that moment.
All right. Derek Gutierrez, thank you for coming on. Where can people find out more about you?
Everywhere at Derek Breathes.
Derek Breathes.
Derek Breathes.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. You're a huge inspiration to me. Just your like presence is it. I don't know how, but being in your presence calms me and can make my day. So thank you for coming on.
It's an honor. Thank you for having me.